Shalom lekulam, זה כבוד בשבילי להיות פה איתכם. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you to talk about a subject which influences the lives of more than 1 billion people on our planet. And the subject is, does our system work properly? And the answer is, it works properly in terms of the creation of wealth and an improvement in the standard of living. But as the standard of living rises, the gap between rich and poor, instead of getting smaller, gets bigger and bigger. And those who are left behind are left permanently stuck behind. Because what does equality of opportunity mean for a child born into a family where both parents are unemployed and have a drug habit? And so over the last dozen years, I have spent time first on the UK's Social Investment Task Force, looking at the issue of how do we tackle poverty and other social issues more effectively. And I began to realize that over the last 150 years, philanthropists came in and tried to deal with them. In the middle of the 1930s, governments came in, and by 1940, governments were beginning to implement in the UK at least a welfare state. And 70 years later, after huge expenditure in finance and in resources, governments are out of cash and out of breath on social issues and don't know where to turn. And yet, between the public sector and the private sector is a huge social sector of not-for-profit organizations. In the United States, they've built up considerable assets. In the UK too. In Israel, less so. In the United States, there are now $750 billion in charitable foundations. In the UK, 100 billion pounds. The numbers of people working in not-for-profits is massive. In the United States, 9 million people. Across the whole of Europe, 11 million people work in not-for-profits. In the UK, 800,000 people work in not-for-profits. And what is the common characteristic of the social sector? Nobody has any money. Very few have scale. Why is this? Well, the reality is that our system takes care of its financial and its economic consequences, but it does not take care of its social consequences. And the philanthropic model and the government model have not enabled not-for-profits whose employees and leaders give their lives to helping others to achieve scale and effectiveness and innovation. And so in 2000, I recommended that we needed to develop a new field of social impact investment, that we needed to connect social entrepreneurs to the capital markets in the same way that we connected business entrepreneurs to the capital markets. And just as venture capital was a reaction to the need to fund high-tech startups and other risk-taking companies, so social impact investment is a reaction to the need to fund social entrepreneurs. We need, ladies and gentlemen, a new mode of financing to tackle social issues. We need to access not the sums that I have talked about in the philanthropic sector, but the $100 trillion in capital markets, and innovation enables us now to do so. The social impact bond, which has been developed now in the UK over 3 years ago, there are now 24 social impact bonds across the world. There's one being worked on here by Social Finance Israel on the Haredim, another one on the early detection of diabetes. There are social impact bonds across the world tackling homelessness, youth unemployment, adoption, foster parentage, disability. They connect a social performance with a financial performance. If you manage to reduce the rate at which prisoners reoffend over 6 or 7 years by working through not-for-profits, government pays back the capital that you raised and an increasing rate of interest that goes from 2 to 13%. I believe that the way for us in Israel and elsewhere to create now innovation and growth among social organizations is to develop impact investment. In the UK, we've set up a social investment bank, which I'm proud to chair. Nick O'Donoghue, who is the CEO, is probably in the audience here today. He's speaking after me in another panel. We've got $600 million out of unclaimed assets in banks, and the balance to $1 billion we've got from the 4 leading UK banks. I believe we can do something similar here in Israel. I believe we can measure social performance. I believe we can encourage innovation. There's a generation of people now that wants to try to do meaningful things as well as profitable things. I believe we can do with social issues what we did with tech issues. Somebody said, very wisely, the future is not a distant place. The future is a road that we build every day. Let us start building it. Thank you.